about 2 hours now, so I prayed and asked for all this beautiful guidance to say, get rid of the rain, because I was packing up this morning in the rain and unpacking as I got here, and I said, this is not going to happen this afternoon. So we have the sun out, and it's a glorious day, as well as Father's Day, and it's a beautiful thing. The summer solstice is a beautiful time of renewal. It's a beautiful time of newness. Not only do we have physical, more light during our day, but it's also a time of higher consciousness. And it's a time for us to really open our hearts and our minds to receive all that Spirit has to give for us. It's a time for you to shine your inner light also out to the world. Every year on New Year's Day, I offer at the center, I offer free meditations. We have over 100 people who walk through the door on that day. And there's always a message from Spirit that comes. And I was reminded this morning as I was getting ready that I need to share some of that because it's tied directly into the summer solstice process that we have. But on January 1st in 2015, Spirit gave me this message, and I'm going to share it with you. It says, your life until now has been about gathering tools for this journey. Up until this point, everything that you've been doing has been about learning, educating yourself, growing, expanding your horizons. With a little bit of fear, with a little bit of doubt, and with a little bit of worry. And I'm sure I could take a poll in here to say, how many of you are being called to Spirit? And you go, but I have to have my full-time job. I can't get rid of that. I know I need to be a healer, but I have to go do this. So this message is addressing some of that. But this year, the message was all about putting all of that fear and that worry and doubt off to the side. That this is a year about putting all of those things that you've learned into service, putting them out into the world, taking ownership to it, being boldly out in the world, saying, I can do this, and knowing that you have the support of those in the world and the support of those in Spirit. All of this leads up to what's called our ascension process. There has to be a death of our humanness in order for us to evolve into this next level of this process for ourselves. And most of us are fearful of letting go of that human side, that thinking and feeling person that we are. Knowing full well that we're spiritual beings, we are this beautiful soul energy that came into this world to make change upon this world. So if we can let go of some of the fear, if we can let go of some of the doubt and the worry, we're going to be able to move forward this year, and you're halfway through right now. So we're 6 months in. Some of the healers and Salome, lovely voice, has come out here, and I've watched all of the people who came with me grow exponentially in the last 6 months, and are really just putting themselves out there along with students and other people who are just customers who are coming into the center. So those who want to own this are going to move much quicker. Those who still have the fear and the worry and the doubt, don't worry, you're not a lost cause. It'll just come a little bit later, a little bit further along in your life, nothing for you to worry about. But that passing of the human, or that death of the humanness, is really kind of a key essential piece. And not only is today the summer solstice, but we celebrate Father's Day too. And my death of the human actually came in connection to my dad. About 12 years ago, I reached my process of evolution. I'm going to probably cry through this, so I'll just let you know that ahead of time, but that's all right. So, I had no reason or no understanding of most of this. I'm a very odd medium and a very odd healer. I never in my life had a reading, and I never in my life had a healing. And I remember being in the fitness world way back when I was in my 20s, and one of my employees said to me, oh, I'm going to a psychic fair this weekend, and I thought she was nuts. And I read every quarter at that same psychic fair now, so not so nuts. But as we celebrate Father's Day, I want to give an ode to my dad, because he's definitely here. He is in spirit. But it's very synchronous for me to be here in Niantic this week. And so when Karen gave me 2 weeks to serve, and I was like, nope, that's the one. I want to be there on Father's Day. And so this is my week that I was able to take off. My beginning, my readings, first started in Niantic. A friend of mine had a space down on Main Street, and she said, oh, come and teach workshops and come and do these psychic fairs. And I was like, okay, sure, I don't know how to do that, but okay. So I did. And I realized, I don't know, I guess I'm pretty good at this, so I guess I'll keep going with it. And from there, doors started opening. But what prompted all of this was my dad's passing. And I had no rhyme or reason to know anything at that point. He was going through a process of passing, and I knew everything that was happening for him. Absolutely everything. I would go through my 20s. Again, I was in the fitness industry, so I was a fairly healthy person. I was a competitive bodybuilder, and I taught aerobics, and I was a trainer. And I used to say to people, I'm not going to make it past the age of 40. And people used to look at me like I was nuts. And I always knew I was different anyway. I didn't know how I was different, but I always knew I was different. And I just kept saying that through my 20s and my 30s, and people thought, what do you mean? You're healthy, you work out all the time, nothing's going to happen for you at that time. And I said, okay, we'll see. When I turned 40, obviously I was still alive. About 3 weeks after I turned 40, my dad's health started going downhill. And 3 months later, he was passing. Now, my dad and I are pretty amazing people together. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My name is Priscilla Ann, but he would call me from the day I was born Princess Ann. So, and I milked that for all it was worth my entire life. You can ask my siblings, still to this day. My dad always wanted to be a minister. And he was very involved. He was a Lutheran. He was very involved in the Lutheran church. He was very involved growing up as a youth, and very involved even when he got older. He was also an amazing singer, so I appreciate Salome being here because it reminds me of this. And he was a lovely tenor. And he was taking music lessons in Simsbury from a lovely woman. And he met my mom, who was a soprano. So both my parents sang opera. None of us can sing. That's why I have Salome here. So they met through many changes and shifts. He went off to Korea, injured, came back. They had to get married. They couldn't get married because my mom was Catholic. And so finally, through many breakups and coming back and forth, the Catholic Church finally said, okay, you can get married to somebody outside the Catholic Church. However, all the kids have to be raised Catholic. So I'm a product of all of that. But my dad still had that longing to be a minister. But now, they knew they were going to have a lot of children. And so with 6 children, he knew he had to have a job that required him to be a provider. And that's what he was. When my dad was about 15 years old, his father passed in his early 40s. And my dad became the dad for his 3 younger brothers, and for my grandmother, became her rock. And so he had that provider mentality all through this marriage with my mom. And at about the age of 41, my dad had a heart incident. And here's my mom at 36, with 6 children under the age of 13, wondering what she was supposed to do with that information. So she ended up going back to work. My dad kind of came through the surgery. And in and out, my mom actually became the provider. Now this is the 70s we're talking about, where she just kept climbing the corporate ladder, and she was actually the provider of the family. And my dad was in and out of jobs, but he had the same job consistently, but depending on his health, he was home, and I had a great opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. But he still longed to be that minister. So he would go to his church, and when the pastor would be on vacation, he would fill in as the guest pastor, kind of like I'm doing today. I just came across a folder that had his sermons in it. There's about 10 of them in there. And it just sat there, and I just read every single one of them, typed on an old typewriter, on that old thin typewriter paper, and it just connected to me. A couple weeks ago, on Memorial Day weekend, my dad was a vet, he had a Purple Heart. I went out to plant flowers at his tombstone. And as I realized I was there, I was sitting around, and I said, this is interesting. I'm at Pine Grove Cemetery. That's where my dad and his family are buried, in Middletown. And I thought, that's very interesting for me to recognize that right now. So, back to my 40s, made it to 40. My dad's health went down. In May, I was in his hospital room. The last thing I said to my dad when he was conscious was, and I don't know how I knew this because I wasn't doing any of this work at that time, Dad, I know that you have more work to do on this earth, and you cannot do it in this broken down body. You have lived way too long in this broken down body, and you need to let that go so that you can go and do God's work from the other side. His eyes got big. He got goosebumps over every part of his entire body. His mouth opened, and he looked up, not at me, but to a higher power, and said, "Wow." Those were the last words I ever said to my dad. That afternoon, we moved him to hospice. About 3 days later, he was going through his transition. I walked into the room in the morning. My sister was there. Said good morning, talked to her, she went off to work. When you're in hospice, the nurses come in and check your feet. And they check your feet because your feet are the furthest extremity from your heart. So as your heart begins to shut down, your feet will start to become very mottled and white, and it will lose the blood first. So every half hour they check your feet. So the nurse came in to check his feet. And I looked her in the eye and I said, "Today is his day to leave." And she said, "No, I've been checking his feet all night. He's fine. There's still blood flow. He's doing fine." And I said, "No, today is his day to leave." She left, probably thinking I was nuts. I had no idea why those words came out of my mouth. His doctor walked in, who was also my doctor. And I said to him, "Today's the last day that you'll be seeing my dad on earth." He said, "Your father's a good man." I said, "Yep, and he'll be an even better man when he gets to the other side." He said, "Well, you never know how things will go." I said, "No, today's his day. He'll be leaving the earth today." He walked out. The nurse comes back in because it's been a half an hour. She looks at his feet. She looks at me in disbelief. Looks at his feet again. Looks at me again and says, "I'm going to give your mom a call." Probably a good idea. So through the whole process, at a time when I thought that I should have been falling apart, again, I'm the princess, I should have been falling apart. And I was as calm as I could possibly be. I made phone calls to people. I had to run to the store to go get some food for my mom. And I said to my dad, "I don't need to be here, but my oldest sister and my brother needed to be present, and they couldn't get there till 3 o'clock. I left, went to the store, come back, I'm on the phone with another sister, my mom calls in. She said, "He's passed." And I said, "Did Don and Ray get there?" He said, "Yes, they were both holding his hand." It was 3:20 in the afternoon. My dad is with me. He's guiding me every step of the way. In the Lutheran Church, there are no eulogies. On top of it, my dad was actually thinking of converting to Catholicism, and he had been working with a priest at my mom's church at the time, and he became very good friends with this gentleman who had been married and had his family and now had grandchildren, and then his wife passed, and he went in to become a priest. So my dad became very good friends with him. Not only did we have a eulogy that I gave, but we had the Catholic priest on the Lutheran altar doing the church tandem. I have no idea where the words came from my eulogy. I have it printed. I still look at it to this day. I have no idea where any of those messages came from. It was a message for each of my siblings. I have 11 nieces and nephews, a message for each of them, and then for everybody that was in the church that day. From that day forward, everything opened up for me. I don't know how I knew how to read. I don't know anything. I just allow it. And that's the biggest thing that I can tell you right now in your life. It doesn't require fear. It doesn't require worry or doubt. Your depth of your humanness will come when it exactly needs to come for you. You need to allow all of the opportunities to come in for you. You need to be very present in every single piece of your day. my next connection to Niantic, about a year ago, my mom's memory is going. She has some dementia and some Alzheimer's, and of all the places that we looked, she now resides at Crescent Point on Main Street in Niantic. I feel like I'm home when I come down here. I checked into the cottage here and I was like, this feels great. I'm happy to have my first service today and that all of you are here. I'm happy to have my peeps here with me too, to serve at the healing and for singing. My dad loved this one passage from the Bible. Love one another as I have loved you. And it's printed on his tombstone. On this Father's Day, on this summer solstice, a time of new beginnings, I wish you all the best of days. Find your joy, find your happiness, find your love of your entire life, and go out there and live it. You are loved, and you are loved. Thank you for allowing me to serve today.